questions.
Jason, what do you think?
Can you show us Wireshark of the LLMNR packets?
Can we show Wireshark the LLMNR packets?
Yeah.
There might be some screenshots already in the blog posts. The LLMNR, I think, is a little bit difficult to demonstrate because a lot of times, like, I don't even think in cloud environments like Azure, LLMNR runs. So it is a little bit more difficult to demo that without giving yourself away too, But that is something that might be in some of the blog posts. They might have a screenshot of Wireshark. I don't particularly look at the packets through Wireshark. It's just more manual, like, stuff to sift through. But, you will get the information from Responder. Especially you can use like Responder analyze mode to just even detect if it's able to intercept any of this traffic, if it's even getting any of these requests, and, even if you can respond to them.
If you Google LLMNR, first comes up like a Wikipedia post, and then the very next thing is the Black Hills blog, which is the number one blog on our website every single month, no matter what else we post. So we are huge proponents of please disable LLMNR, and we've learned that most people do, except for admins. Admins forget to turn it off for themselves, and when they create the gold image for themselves, they also forget to turn it off inside the gold image, and then only the admins really have LLMNR turned on. And that is one of our favorite things to do in a tabletop exercise for backdoors and breaches. Okay, next. How do you avoid degradation of the networks when performing or attempting a machine in the middle attack?
Like I said, you're going to want to be very specific a lot of the times on, like with IPv6, for example, you want to, strategically pick out your targets, because if you all of a sudden say, hey, like, I'm handling all IPv6 traffic, that is going to probably knock down your environment. Like if you're on like an implant or, computer, whatever it is, you probably don't have the power that it needs to actually sift through all of that data and then forward it out. So really just be picky about what targets you're picking. Be selective. Don't just blanket everything. Don't always just say, yeah, whatever it is, like, come to me. Sometimes analyzing traffic is fine because all you're doing is analyzing broadcast or multicast requests. And those are going to be sent to you regardless. Now, when you are relaying or spoofing, that's when you can kind of run into some problems. So a lot of times I like to just analyze traffic for a little bit and see if it's even viable for me to do a relay.
So what is your advice on how to mitigate IPv6 poisoning?
Well, there's a couple things that you can do. One, if you are not doing IPv6, if you're not handling it in your environment, I would make sure that IPv6 is probably turned off for your computers as well. Like, that's a default setting for it to just be on. And like I said, once IPv6 is on and the attacker has assigned a link local address to a host, it is going to default to using IPv6. It's the preference over IPv4. So when it is going to send out these DNS requests and different things, it's going to be using the IPv6 address. So that's another reason why these make these attacks pretty successful.
I'm looking for the webcast that we did on Eavesarp. Justin, when he announced it, released the tool, he did a webcast that day. Fun story. Back then, a Linux box would not be able to share screens on GoToWebinar, which is what we used. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't find that out until about an hour and a half before the webcast. And I was like, you need to go buy a computer. And he's like, I don't have time. And I was like, you need to go buy a computer. So he raced to Best Buy. He calls me. He's like, what's my budget? And I was like, I don't care. So he buys a computer, he gets back. And as he's getting ready, Windows had to update. He had to install, he had to refresh everything. And he finally got it going at 12:58 And he was like, okay, everybody, here's the webcast. So that was my fun.
I mean, it's an awesome tool. Like, I love that he has that. He's created that. I think it's pretty underrated. I know it's similar to another tool that exists out there, but he added quite a few more features that I think were really relevant. Let me try and go back to that section. There's like so much more I probably could have included, but there's a lot here. I think that's I'm trying to remember. It provides the DNS name resolution capabilities, I think is really important. But he does have that really great blog on it too, which gives a lot of information. Because a lot of times you look on GitHub and you're like, okay, this is information, but like it's very basic compared to like Justin made a really great blog about it, which I did pull a lot of information from his blog to add to this slide.
Sure. All right. Someone wants to know, when is your talk on making slides?
I don't have one planned. I'm gonna be honest, I cheat and I just use Canva. So there's like a couple different presentation slide decks that are already pre-made on. There's actually a lot on Canva, but there's also another website called Prezi, which also has really great pre-made slide decks.
All right. So here's a question. If an adversary has already infiltrated the network and is using IPv6 traffic, if IPv6 is turned off, will a message pop up that it's in use, being like a smoking gun?
I am not pop-up where. So
that's a good question.
I guess if you're running, I don't know. I guess if you're running specific scanners, potentially you can see maybe like the IPv6 request or IPv6 traffic. But if it's turned off, like on the client itself, then you really don't have to worry about it too much. Just like a lot of times, like I said, it's on by default. So you do have to make the effort to turn that off in the settings.
There's a few people asking questions about Eavesarp. So what I'm doing is I'm sending them the link to the webcast that Justin did. Because Justin, when he announced it, it's a full on like demo of how Eavesarp works. So
yeah. Like I said, I wanted to cover because we do have more in depth about like the relays and about Eavesarp, but I wanted to like throw these all into the slides and be like, hey, like if you are looking at if you need to get credentials, right? Here are 3 things that you can do to do that. But obviously the full demos are going to give so much more information. So I highly recommend watching them and reading the blogs before you use the tools, just so you understand the specific caveats, especially when it comes to like accidentally DDoSing your client, which you probably don't want to do.
Yeah, I'd like to get a shout out to all the Black Hills testers who do develop tools that we give out to the community. It's really cool to be around a bunch of people who do tool development, because it's constantly like improving tools, making tools, sharing tools. And then there's a lot of tools that we'll eventually share. So I'll just hit that. All right. Any other questions that I might have missed? Brian, did you see anything?
No, you bounce around a lot when you answer questions, so it's hard for me to track where you're at. Yeah, I think you got most of them. I've been trying to track down the ones that you're not touching on, but I think we're good.
Here's one that I didn't add. What are loot files?
Loot files is basically when it is pulling information out of files. So like the WPAD files might have information. Like before, when we were talking about NTLMRelayx automatically dumping the SAM database, so you could get like either clear text credentials or hash credentials. Sometimes you get like you get user accounts. So the loot file is just like where you throw everything that is being collected that is valuable into that file, so that you can like if you're in a pen test, you can maybe give it to the customer if they want. Like sometimes you redact passwords or hashes and things like that. But yeah, that's where all the good stuff's going to end up.
Okay. Someone put in Discord chat, loot.txt equals best canary ever.
Yeah, that's funny.
What's more successful, SMB attacks or Kerbroasting?
That's a good question.
We could say it depends on how their environment's set up to vulnerability to either one.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to see like how often. Like I think I use relays more frequently than Kerbroasting, but that's I just think because of my background. I'm like, oh, I just throw everything up and I listen at the start of a test because you have people logging on. I mean, one time was using Responder and I found like I got Nessus credentials. Like they had their own Nessus scanner and I got credentials that way. So you never know what you're gonna find, but yeah, I always throw up the at least Responder and run that in the background while I'm working on other things.
I will say I do a lot of tabletop exercises, a lot of instant response with teams. And when it comes up, we talk about Kerbroasting, we talk about Responder. I would say only 20% of blue team members actually know what Responder is or what Kerbroasting means or anything. So there's that 80% who are being introduced to it potentially right this minute.
Yeah.
That tools even exist and those techniques even exist.
Yeah, especially like coming from a network engineering background and then into security, it's like a big eye opener, honestly, because I feel like a lot of these protocols and things aren't really discussed at that level of like when we're talking about vulnerabilities. And like as a network engineer, I feel like a lot of times you're just like, oh, I need to make this work, right? Like that's your goal is like, there's this thing we need to do. We need to make it work. We got to figure it out. And then the security team's like, like not like that, And so I think that's really common. But what's also kind of fun is that, if you are in charge of like a network or maybe some security component, like you can run these tools yourself. Like I said, a lot of times in analyze mode, just to see what kind of information you're, passively collecting. You're not actively requesting information, particularly just passively answering messages or getting these replies and things like that. So I highly recommend it because I think you will be surprised what you might find.
So Serena, we're going to what are your final thoughts for today? And then that will be the end of the webcast. And if you want to take off, feel free. But Brian and I are going to stick around for a few minutes to talk about what we do in our SOC. So Serena, final thoughts for today.
Yes. My final thoughts are definitely take a look at the other links and other webcasts that go a little bit more in depth with the tools and techniques that I've shown over this. Like I said, this is supposed to give you just like if you're going on a pen test, here are some things you can try. But again, it's really important to kind of, read the documentation and understand some of the pitfalls and caveats to using some of these tools. And yeah, definitely take advantage of the fantastic blogs that are available to you. And that's all I got.
Serena, are you working on any classes or anything that you got coming up?
I eventually would like to come out with like a networking for Pentesters class, and I am slowly working on that. So, some of the information that we've already kind of gone over in webcast 1 and webcast 2 are probably going to be included in that with, potentially labs and actually working with the tools. And just like a little bit more in depth because 1 hour is a very short period of time to go over networking and any like real meaningful extent.
The webcast is now ending. This is the end of the webcast. If you'd like to stick around and hear Brian and I talk about what we do on the SOC, feel free to do so. But we don't want to hold you hostage. That's why we didn't cover any of this ahead of time. We don't like doing this where you feel like you have to be here. So if you want to stick around, please stick around. In fact, I'm going to give you like a whole minute to leave if you're just listening in the background and you're like, oh, I don't want to hear that. But what we're going to do is talk about what we do as a SOC provider of a service to people who want to hire us for SOC. We do this from time to time because sometimes people do forget that we're a pen testing company that also provides SOC services and other things. And so every once in a while, we like to remind you that we also have services that you can hire us for in case you like this thing that we're doing. So I will give people another 30 seconds or so. Serena, you can stick around if you want to. If not, you can turn off your camera. It is up to you. I'm not telling you to leave. I'm just telling you if you don't want to stay, you don't.
Yeah. John asks, can you do your courses virtually? And absolutely. That's my preference is virtual. I think if I do have a class, I'll do probably mainly virtual. And then at Wild West Hacking Fest, hopefully I could teach the course there, because then, I'm already there, right? And we're all together. So I think that would be cool. I would love to meet more people in person.
All right. So I think I've given people adequate enough time. So if you're sticking around at this point, then it means that you want to hear about the SOC services that we offer. So I'm going to ask Brian a couple questions. Once again, if you would like to hire us to be your SOC, we wouldn't turn you down. So Brian, if somebody, Brian, if somebody wants to have us be their SOC, what's the first step?
Either go to the website and fill out a web form, or you can just email us, say, I want to know more about your SOC, to consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com. And
then do they talk to a sales team that's going to sell them on a whole bunch of stuff that they may or may not need? It's a leading question.
I know. They get to talk to me, who's horrible at sales. And no, they won't talk to a sales team. They mostly talk to me. Or John, if you're really, really lucky and I'm sick, John will jump in and do them every once in a while, but don't bank on that. But no, it's definitely not a, one thing I've learned is when people are wanting to talk about SOC, it's a very long term project to even discuss getting a SOC or switching SOCs. So it's a very long term process we're very used to. So it's not going to be high pressure or anything like that.
Yeah. And in fact, if you're thinking about your SOC for next year, yes, now is the time to start thinking about next year's SOC contract or something.
Dear God, please, yes. When we have people that come to us and hey, can we have our SOC contract that's expiring in 46 days. Could we get you guys going in that and have some lap overtime? It's well, yeah, we need to go pretty fast. So definitely plan ahead with it.
All right. So once again, all these are leading questions I already know the answers to, but you all don't. So what makes our SOC different? And it's because we're pen testers first, right?
So here's what the drum that I've been beating lately. And I'm gonna flip the question back around and give everybody a bit of advice for your SOC vendor or for your own internal SOC. Is ask yourself the question: how do I know that my rule sets are going to fire off if there's an attack on my environment? That's a question you need to ask yourself. Do you just trust that it's going to work? Do you just assume that everything from the action being taken on an endpoint to that alert firing in the SIM to the ticket generating in your ticket system, is it actually working? And I think I think almost everybody, except for BHIS SOC customers, can emphatically say, I don't know if that's true or not. And I think the data backs it up. If you look at the Verizon data breach reports going back to 2017, 2018, less than 5% of compromises are discovered by SOC services. And there's a reason for that, is because 100 things can break between an action being taken on an endpoint and a ticket being issued to an analyst. And I think our biggest differentiator, if I'm going to be completely honest, is that we do attack simulations against ourselves in collaborations with our customers. So we don't just sit around and either wait for you to hire a pen testing firm, either us or somebody else, or for you to be compromised to know if everything's working the way it's supposed to. We run those continuous attacks against ourselves in collaborations with our customers to make sure everything runs properly. And if your SOC's not doing that, you shouldn't trust them.
So what you're saying is that we put a SOC in place, or we offer that, and we ingest the logs, we ingest the files, we have the alerts set up, and then we actually attack that organization continuously, threat emulation, to make sure that the alerts alert.
Correct. And we actually get a ticket that fires and things like that. Yes, you did hear a dog. Somebody asked that. Yeah, so we get it in place. Once we get through the onboarding, we start doing ongoing attack simulations at least once a week, preferably. And we do that for all of our SOC customers. It's something we're working towards, getting to a weekly cadence on stuff like that with all of them. And no, our SOC doesn't require an agent. We can do an agent for work from home, but it does not require an agent to sit on their endpoint.
How long does it take to onboard somebody new?
We've done it as fast as 4 hours with one customer that we started onboarding, and we discovered very quickly that they were already compromised. So everybody went into high gear.
Okay.
And that was 4 hours all the way to over a year for some customers. Not over a year. I shouldn't say over a year. We are ingesting logs and doing things, but our speed is very much so dependent upon our customers. We can get things ready to go and get going in the matter of, I'd say at most 2 months, because We do some machine learning stuff that we've got to get trained up and things like that. But yeah, I would say it's like a 1 to 2 month time frame.
Yeah. And I think one of the cool things is like our SOC analysts can become pen testers.
Well, it's kind of like our feeding ground for pen testing. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Is having our SOC analysts trained up and eventually having them jump into pen testing. And somebody said, I need to show my dog. Here's my dog. Her name's Pixie. She hangs out with me all day. She's massive, so I can't. And her face is blurred. But she's a child or something like that. So, yeah.
So a couple questions. What are some large environments your SOC monitors? Any org in the 280,000 endpoints, 220 user range?
280,000. So we're doing supplemental SOC services for like a Fortune. I'm not going to go that deep, but like a Fortune 50 company. Let's just put it that way. Fortune 10 technically, but yeah.
Someone asked us if we would bid for a pen testing RFP. Yes, we have a team of people who will respond to pen testing RFP. So thank you. As our SOC 24/7, 365.
Yes. Except for leap years, then it's 366.
It says we are located in Europe. So is there a 6-hour time gap between your SOC and the US?
We have people all over the globe. So we follow the sun.
We follow the sun. How many customers, clients does DHIS SOC currently help to manage?
We're just over the 25 mark now.
What type of training would you recommend for analysts to become pen testers? Anti-siphon training?
Anti-siphon training. I think John's intro to pen testing class is fantastic. Is a great place to start. Depends on where they're starting. If they have no knowledge, his 3 intro to security, SOC core skills classes are great. But I think his intro to pen testing class is fantastic for that. There's a whole roadmap on the website too. I think it's kind of out of date, but you can jump into other people's classes as well. Like Chris Trainer's class for offensive tooling is fantastic.
You mentioned SIM. Do you provide the SIM tech or do you manage the client's existing SIM or either? Any SIM limitations?
We use Elastic for our SIM. We house it if you want us to, but if you're utilizing like Azure Sentinel or even like a Splunk instance and you want us to utilize your stack and your infrastructure, we can certainly do that as well.
Someone asked, do we have any financial services customers?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we have billion-dollar credit union. We have a $2.5 billion bank. We have a few financial services.
And the only time we ever hesitate is because we want to make sure that we don't say names out loud.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So as of Europe, you comply with GDPR?
I hate that person. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's just GDPR has that little spot in my brain that just jumps around. I would hesitate to say yes fully. I mean, I would say I would want to get back to somebody on that. I would say yes, just because we have customers who have situations that are over in Europe, but it depends on how you go about categorizing certain things within that. That definitely merits a further in-depth conversation around things.
Someone said, is pricing for SOC services based on endpoints? Are there any minimum requirements?
No minimum. Obviously the cost per endpoint is much higher if you're very, 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 very small, like 5 to 25 people. But yes, we do charge per endpoint. And that's like cloud account. So we can do cloud too. So it could be, your O365 accounts. We would count those as endpoints because we're pulling logs from cloud resources as well.
All right. Any other questions before we wrap? And to the 600 of you that stuck around, thank you so much. And if you are looking for SOC services, we'd like to be your SOC services. We enjoy looking at alerts. We enjoy what we really enjoy is the continuous pen testing part where we get to test everything. Brian, what do you enjoy most about the SOC?
So honestly, this is very personal to me, so it's not going to make anybody like, oh, that's great SOC. I like it because it's something that I have worked very closely. He's not here. He's like my partner in crime, Derek or D-Rock. It's something that him and I have been working on very hard for the last 3 years to get it to a point where we really, 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 really like it. And we really love what we're doing with it because him and I both kind of agreed if we're going to do it just like everybody else, it's not going to be worth it. And so him and I have been really kind of hand in hand managing a lot of it and building up a lot of it for the last 3 years. And it's really cool to see something that went from absolutely nothing to what it is now. And know that you were a big part of that. And you work with like some really cool people that actually give a crap about SOC services and give a crap about what they're doing. Because like on the pen testing side of things, when I came in, I was like employee number like 25 or something like that. And now we're like over 100 employees, right? And when we first started, like when you talk with the pen testers, they like the pen test because they actually care about making the customers better. Like our testers would usually sometimes get very frustrated if they couldn't do the job that they want to do for the customers. And it's really interesting because when we started the SOC, that's what I was worried about, is we were going to pull in people who just didn't care. They were just like, I'm just going to see the alerts and do minimal work and get done with it. But we've actually been able to bring in some people that actually care what they're doing and actually want to do a good job and complain when things are not as good as they want it to be for the customers. And so that's kind of my favorite part, is to see it's grown into what it is today.
So I just had someone reach out. How can we get reach out for further discussion? If you go to blackhillsinfosec.com, you go to the contact us page, you fill out that form. Melissa is going to get it, or Nora is going to get it. Like, we have a very small team. We do not sell you services. We do not have an inside sales team. We do not do those things. Like, we do not hound you if you do not respond. Like, we are here to help you. We are not here to make commissions. We're not here to kill. Like, we're not going to be that thing that you fear when it comes to the sales process.
Yeah. And then F&G had a good question. Are we co-managed? So all of our tools and everything we utilize is we give unfettered access to it. So we're all speaking from the same language. That's one of our big things when we put it together was, if we're going to do it, we're not going to have some black box up in the cloud that we see. All of our customers get access into the SIM, into the AC Hunter dashboard. Any tooling that we use, you get access and visibility into as well. So
last question,
kind of co-managed.
Can you provide response actions too, like isolate an endpoint for a client by using DR, for instance, or block traffic at a firewall?
Yep. So if it's midnight on Christmas Eve and there's active ransomware trying to run throughout your environment, we want us to do that initial tier 1, tier 2 response, and also get into like your EDR dashboard and isolate traffic, shut down endpoints, things like that. We can certainly do that as well. I'd
like to thank you all for like sticking around. We appreciate that. We only do this like every once a quarter, just to remind people that we also offer services, because sometimes people forget. And sometimes, like you said, Brian, like it takes a long time to get SOC up and running. So if you're thinking about later this year or next year, now's the time to start talking about it. Brian, any final words before we end?
No, that was it. Yeah, I think I don't want to keep badgering anything. So I think it was good. That's how I feel about it, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on a Black Hills Information Security webcast. And once again, we only do this after you get a chance to leave. So we won't be doing this in the future, and maybe again in 3 months. All right. See ya. Thanks, Brian.
Yep.